and it would stop veteran from dominating with grenades. Because if there's one thing a friend of mine, Big Dom, has really been showing the last couple of weeks, is that grenade vet has very much reached a critical mass. Those grenades are now so powerful that a single veteran can absolutely disrupt the entire flow of the game for the other players, and that is just ridiculous.
Kaboom!
Yes, Rico. Kaboom.
Come on, boys!
Alright, welcome back to the channel, the home of Grenade Veteran. Veteran Unleashed. Let's go. Alright, and the way I want to present this build and future builds is I want to give you the core build and some tech points. These tech points will change the playstyle of the build slightly, but you will notice the differences. They all perform at the same level, but again, just on what you prefer. Take your pick, have fun with it. Now going on to the first section, like I've mentioned before, Out for Blood is the best single node in this section, but as a package of 3 points, I do prefer the middle section. Truthfully, they are both as strong paths as each other, and really just comes down to preference. What sticks out to me personally is I find this build, power sword with bolt pistol or power sword with plasma gun, to be a brute force build, and the best defense is a good offense. Getting access to that extra toughness damage reduction just allows you to stay in the fight, minimize mistakes, it increases the margin for error, it just allows you to stick to your game plan for as long as possible. Now, confirmed kill is pretty simple. The biggest thing that you need to know, or should know, is that confirmed kill stacks upon itself the 20% toughness replenishment over 10 seconds. So when you get multiple kills of grenades or your power sword or plasma gun, this will just start ramping to insane degrees. And because I have my melee out a lot, that's why I don't feel the need to run Out for Blood, because I have that base toughness replenishment. It just plays better into how I like to play. Combining with the +1 stamina, very useful on Veteran, has a lot of useful effects, blocking, sprinting, push attacks, etc. Now, because I stay in my melee form for the majority of the run, even with the plasma gun, I don't find much need for one motion. Not to say it's not good, you definitely notice it, really good, but again, as a package of 3 points. Now, with Out for Blood, just in case you don't know, the Veteran has a base melee toughness replenishment on kill of 5% and 0% in ranged. In case you also didn't know, your blitzers equip onto the last equipped weapon. So if I have a bolt pistol out and I kill an enemy, I'll get 0% toughness replenishment as base. If I take Out for Blood, he will now give me 5% because it's an additional to what the base is. The base is 5% melee, 0% for ranged. So if I throw a grenade and I kill 10 enemies with my bolt pistol or ranged weapon, I'm going to replenish 50% of my toughness. If I do it with my melee weapon last equipped, 10 enemies will now give me 100% of my toughness, because between the 5% base that I naturally have and the additional 5% for Out for Blood, that's 10% on each kill. Now, I'm sure you can understand why that's crazy. You lose all your toughness, throw a grenade, you're bound to kill at least 5-10 dudes. You're going to get your entire toughness pullback, and then you can go back to defaulting on your melee and range weapons to maintain that toughness. But again, it just comes down to I find myself not reaching critical points of toughness with close order drills more often. If you can fit both in your build, so go down this middle tree or this right tree, both stamina and movement speed are goated, don't underestimate them, but you can use additional 2 points to come into Out for Blood as well. It just makes you a monster in terms of toughness replenishment. You become incredibly hard to kill. Going on to the blitz, I've explained it before, shredder grenades are the best. They stack with the bolt pistol's lethal proximity of 25% increased explosion radius, and grenade tinkerer leading to 28-meter diameter grenades, or basically just under ogre and frag bombs. These also do interact with a bunch of talents, blessings, the perks on your weapons, and a couple of other things. So you can ramp these to some pretty insane degrees, and I'll explain that later on in the build. Now, between Get Back in the Fight and Catch Your Breath, I do think Get Back in the Fight is better, but you can turn your brain off with Catch Your Breath, and it's just another source of toughness replenishment. This build is pretty good at keeping enemies off of you, and when it comes to getting into those ranged firefights with shooters, this is active. Again, just going into always being at that 100% toughness when you can. As I just explained, frag grenades get the 25% damage and the radius. The radius is the most important here. Now in this middle section, I'm sure I don't need to discuss it. Duty and honor, mango toughness, pretty damn good. Goes into the whole survivability aspect of the build. It lasts for 15 seconds. Kill, a couple of specials with tactical awareness, and you have some pretty great uptime with duty and honor, pretty much permanent. Field improvision, a ton of survivability, cleanse corruption, improve your toughness replenishment rate, so you can always be at 100% toughness or in your gold toughness if you have that activated. Getting maximum grenades if you're an Auric player or below, that's pretty incredible. But even in Havoc, those single grenade replenishments are highly impactful. As a single point investment on a grenade veteran, you can't go wrong. Twin blast, this you can tech out of if you're Auric or below, but especially if you're a Havoc player, there is just enough enemy density and enough grenades thrown that this really does add a lot to your damage profile. And again, when you notice the twin blast throws, it's very important to notice and try to learn to notice in your throw, especially on the first throw, is it a single or a twin blast? Because if you twin blast on the initial throw, that means you should conserve grenades, meaning you can keep grenade uptime. If you initial throw into a twin blast, that means you just get a free nuke on that area. And again, it comes down to always playing around that double grenade combo. Demo stockpile, consistent, 1 grenade, 60 seconds, enough said, always take it. Now in this section, we have a lot of toughness replenishment, share it with your team, enough said, right? You can go keep their heads down. Suppression is a very powerful mechanic, especially on the bolt pistol, which already has a naturally high amount of suppression. If you got a high base amount of suppression, now adding a percent base multiplier, it's pretty damn good. Again, for consistency though, I will suggest Born Leader, but I do notice if I want to carry more, you know, if I'm just quick playing in an Auric Maelstrom, for example, I will personally get more benefit from keep their heads down because I can just throw a couple of shots in that direction and they're gonna shit themselves. 6 seconds on specialist kill to reduce your duty and honor and voice of command cooldown. Make sure you're prioritizing those specials. When you see dogs and mutants, that's prime time to chuck out some grenades because that's going to start rolling on your demo team procs. It's going to kill specials because demo team procs on specials and elites, and it's reducing your voice of command cooldown. Demolition team doesn't go anywhere on any grenade build or veteran build in my opinion. So what it translates to is when there's 20 elites or specials, on average you replenish 1 grenade. So when I see 10 elites or specials, that's when I'm like, okay, there's 50-50 chance that I'm going to replenish a grenade here. When there's 15 elites or specials, okay, that's about a 75% chance. When there's 20 or more elites or specials, I'm pretty much guaranteed. I'm not guaranteed, but again, in practical terms, it's pretty consistent. I can rely on at least 1 grenade coming back through demo team. So playing around those timings of the AI director aggression, when the AI director gets most aggressive, that's when the grenades come out and you maintain a pretty stable pace throughout the entire run. 25% toughness nodes are some of the best nodes on any talent tree for any class. Now for consistency and breakpoints, Algorans and monstrosities, bring it down. It impacts base damage, which also impacts explosive and bleed damage on your shredder grenades. I find the most value with bring it down. All 3 of these have case uses and value to grenade veteran, but again, bring it down in my opinion has the most. And again, because Grenade Veteran is so centered in the middle section, I find more consistency and less points investment, so I can go elsewhere by just going focus target, up to 20% damage on a single target for all teammates. That's pretty fantastic. It also helps direct your team to the important things: netters, dogs, bombers, flamers, a crusher pack, etc. Again, Born Leader, if you're also taking to out for blood, doing like the massive toughness replenishment playstyle, sharing that with your team, ramping it. Again, you're just a monster when it comes to toughness replenishment. It's hard to get below that 75% threshold of Iron Will, combining with close order drills, which does have diminishing returns, but it still hits really good thresholds. It just allows you to stay above this threshold. If you're above 75% toughness on a veteran, you're pretty much a tank. Now that's the core build done. I'm going to give you some tech switches, some suggestions, do whatever you want. When I come to the weapons and explain the blessings, this will make more sense in how you want to tech with these talent points. Now going back to the first build and these tech points, the first one is, if you're using like the plasma gun for example, you can go into the extra ammo and superiority complex. Precision strikes was just some nice consistent breakpoint. Superiority complex does affect bleed and explosive damage. It is a base damage boost to all forms of damage on all elites. Another one is Grenadier, and then combining that with reciprocity. If you want to stay with the focused target build, you want the extra grenades, but you want that little bit of crit chance. It reaches a nice threshold where every 1 in 3 hits is usually a crit. Alternatively, if you don't want the Grenadier and play more into the melee aspect and timing your grenades, you can put 1 point into Desperado and 1 point into Redirect Fire. Desperado and Reciprocity is 35% crit chance. Again, that nice threshold. Combining with a bit of extra base damage, nice breakpoints or time to kills in a horde, and it also affects your team. Now let's say you tech out of Redirect Fire, you have the 4 initial points. Another thing that you can also do is tech out of Twin Blast and Field Improv, or 1. So if you tech out of 1, you can come down the melee tree like this. Reciprocity, Desperado, Toughness, and Trench Fighter, and put that point into Redirect Fire. More consistent because Redirect Fire has a lot of uptime. You're adding a nice threshold to your crit chance to bring consistency to the build. Attack speed is, again, it's mostly a melee build. You're using your bolt pistols to snipe ranged elites or specials, or the plasma gun in condensed areas. And again, Twin Blast isn't always active. It has less uptime than the other two, or the other choices made now, and you may not always find an ammo or med crate. So it's just something to consider. I do like this setup, and it just comes down to playing more into melee and timing my grenades well. I can also conserve one of those points on Redirect Fire, come back to Twin Blast or Field Improvision. And again, the build that I use in the gameplay that I'll show a little bit of at the end of the video and a full video later on, I tech into Grenadier and Competitive Urge. Give me those RNG nodes, I like them. If I have the 2 points to spare, I'll also go into the crit chance as well. So my personal favorite version of this build is this, with the Competitive Urge, Redirect Fire, the extra grenades. If I have 2 extra points to spare and I'm going Fire Team, you can also go into One Motion or Out for Blood to ramp that toughness replenishment, or go into the crit chance. Again, there's a lot of options here. I hope I've explained a lot of them. In case you also didn't know, close quarter kill zone, that affects all forms of damage, explosion and bleed as well if you want to tech into that. And again, that pretty much covers Veteran Unleashed. I personally prefer focus target. I don't feel like I need the attack speed on the power sword, but I do love it. Just depends on the day. I'll switch between the two. Moving on to the weapons. There's 3 dump stats here. If you're taking Brutal Momentum, you can dump cleave targets, because with Brutal Momentum, you're bypassing that hit max, the cleave cap that the power sword naturally has. It's just a nice way to min-max, and which I'll showcase the difference of blessings in a moment. You can also dump damage because it only affects the first target done. And again, this is an AoE build. I don't notice any breakpoints lost, like in the grand scheme of things. I may be wrong, but again, this is just from personal experience in games. Or what I dump for the most part is mobility. I don't notice it changes any thresholds. I get the same amount of dodges. I can still push and dodge back from a poxburster. I can still dodge when I have efficient dodges pretty well. Yet when you get to inefficient dodges, that's probably when you'll notice the biggest impact of mobility as a dump stat. But with enough practice, you should be able to use 4 dodges well enough between your other tools in the build, like stagger from voice of command or grenades. Use that time to refresh your dodge timers. Now on to the perks. Flak, Carapace, and Unyielding are going to be the 3 best choices. I like Flak because it's the most common armor type. Perk damage on weapon is a base damage boost. So when I again throw a grenade with my power sword or ranged weapon last equipped, it will use those perks to ramp the bleed damage. And now I take Carapace on the power sword because it helps reach again those better breakpoints. We are taking the power sword to deal with Carapace in the first place to supplement the power grenades bring with horde killing. And just to correct anyone who might be confused, I definitely recommend the Mark 6 Power Sword over the Mark 3, and I'll go over movesets and blessings in a moment. If you're going to change a perk, I usually change Flak for Unyielding. I don't change Carapace with the Power Sword. Onto the blessings, Power Cycler is always on the Power Sword until it gets changed to be like the Relic Blade if that happens. And then you have 3 choices between blessings if you want the most synergy with Grenade Veteran. The first one is Slaughterer. Now, killing enemies with grenades doesn't stack Slaughterer, unfortunately, which I'll show now. So I have my Power Sword, I go to my grenade, it will still be the last equipped. I got no Slaughterer stacks. However, if I kill enemies and then throw grenades, I still maintain those 4 Slaughterer stacks when I come back to my Power Sword, go back to killing enemies as you saw from my buff indicator, and that will ramp the explosion and bleed damage from grenades. Power also does affect the impact from your weapon as well as the cleave, so the amount of units you can hit per swing. So that's why I'll generally recommend Slaughterer with Grenade Veteran. It allows for some really nice breakpoints on crushes. It improves your horde kill, but the horde clear is less than Brutal Momentum. So something that I'll show is Slaughterer and Brutal Momentum right now. If I have 5 enemies without Slaughterer procced, as you can see, the damage distribution there now is Slaughterer stacked. As you can see, we kill that 2 guys and a bit more damage on the following 3. However, with Brutal Momentum, even with cleave targets as a dump stat, it allows for much more efficient horde clear. As you can see, the reason for that, and we're going to whip out paint now, is I'll quickly break down what's actually happening. So with Slaughterer versus Brutal Momentum, on the first target I'm hitting 600, then 500, then 400, all the way down till it just taps out and I can no longer cleave through the targets anymore because the hit mass modifier is surpassing the threshold from the Power Sword. Okay, with Brutal Momentum I'll do 600, but because or if I kill that target on the swing in a weak spot, it'll reset that cleave modifier back to the original 600. So I'll keep doing 600 damage until I don't kill an enemy with a weak spot, and then it'll start ticking into the next slots where necessary. If I kill 3 targets, I don't kill 1, then kill 2 more, that will then surpass 2 more here in the middle before I reach the 400 threshold. I hope that makes sense. I apologize for my artistic skills, but that's what's happening. And finally, the last one I'm going to recommend is Sunder. Now this is mostly a Havoc or a mostly melee scab modifier because it gets the most benefit against Carapace. Now something with the Power Sword, Brutal Momentum, and Slaughterer even when max stacked, which I'll show in a moment, they do not cleave Carapace. So with Brutal Momentum now, as you see, the Carapace stopped the cleave, even with a fully stacked Slaughterer. I cannot cleave Carapace. Now back to Sunder. Sunder does 3 things. 1, it increases the cleave on all energized attacks. 2, it gives heavy melee attack damage plus 20%, so not active on your lights or push attacks, but it is there. The 3rd thing is it allows the Power Sword to now cleave Carapace. Yes, let me show you. Now Now the first thing I wanted to say, is it a lot of damage? Like, will it allow you just one shot 4 crushes? No, but being able to cleave carapace so you can still distribute some of that damage onto the horde is quite powerful in a Havoc environment, especially allowing you to use the push attack to now cleave multiple crusher or mauler heads. So again, between those 3 dump stats, cleave targets if you're taking brutal momentum, you can dump damage if you just want the mobility, which I have done and do. However, for now, until I do more testing with damage as a breakpoint, I'm going to recommend mobility just as an all-purpose weapon. Again, it's a brute force stand your ground. The best defense is a good offense type of weapon. Power cycler combined with those 3 blessings, sunder, brutal momentum, and slaughterer. Slaughterer as a general purpose blessing that affects all forms of damage, gets nice amounts of cleave and the best single target breakpoints. Brutal Momentum's going to have the best trash horde clear, and Sunder's going to have the best all-purpose horde clear. They all reach those top damage profiles. Again, because Darktide has like kind of seeded maps, you don't know if it's going to be a mostly drag, mostly scab, or a mixed run. And because of density and lower difficulties, I think Slaughterer is going to be the best for most players. If you're a high Havoc player, choose any of the 3 blessings. If you're Auric and below, again, Slaughterer or Brutal Momentum is going to be probably the best. Into the Curios, 2 toughness Curios, 1 stamina Curio to work with target down, 3 stamina regeneration, 3 5% toughness, and 3 combat ability regen. You can change the toughness to be block efficiency. It works really well with the power sword just with the blocking mechanics that it has. And again, going back to the block efficiency, the charge block animations, it works really well with the power sword. It has a ton of base stamina. We take the toughness, the stamina curio. It has a good amount of natural block efficiency, and you can just take that to some pretty crazy degrees with some block efficiency if you want to tech that way. Now going on to the bolt pistol, I don't notice the difference between 60 and 80% reload speed. It's a difference of around 0.2 and 0.4 seconds. Not noticeable, especially if you're taking weapon specialist. If you do notice it, you can take mobility as a dump stat. Personal preference, I recommend reload speed, flak and unyielding perks, because those are the most common things we're shooting at. Flak armored elites, or trash mobs, the stalkers, or reapers, bulwarks, bosses, etc. I just like being able to put the bleed on bosses, some enemies, combine that with grenades, as in I'll chuck 2 grenades, that's 12 stacks of bleed, use puncture to then ramp those bleed stacks on certain enemies to 16 stacks, etc. Now the plasma gun, there's a few things you can do with it. If you're going with the crit chance, gets hot, reciprocity, allows you to get some nice thresholds. Combine that with blaze away, which is strength, improves base damage, that also improves grenade bleed and explosion damage. As for perks, flat carapace and unyielding, same as the power sword. I just run flat carapace on both. I can probably replace the power sword to be flak on unyielding, but again, this has just been working for me. You can replace the crit chance with rising heat if you're not playing into that crit chance. Raw base damage, this also does scale your bleed and explosion damage. Or you can replace that with Glory Hunter if you want the extra toughness replenishment. Again, playing into that extremely tanky guy. For me personally, if I'm using the plasma gun, I'm probably incorporating some form of crit, at least reciprocity, into my build with Grenadier. Combining with Gets Hot, that's what I like. Or I just like double ramping it if I'm not playing crit. I just offer the Glory Hunter choice because it isn't bad. It is pretty decent, and if you want a bit more sustainability, go for it. Now for dump stats, the easiest dump stat is charge rate, because it makes a little bit of a difference, but not much. Whereas thermal resistance allows you to get 1 extra shot. So I'm going to show you the difference between thermal resistance and charge rate as a dump stat. So with charge rate as a dump stat, this will be 12% heat per charge and should allow 8 shots in continuous fire. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Before we have to heat, okay? So if we take charge as a dump stat, that's 8 plasma shot in 1 cycle. Now, if I take thermal resistance and faster charge rate, I don't know if you can notice it on the viewer end, but I can feel it and notice it. You'll get higher DPS, but you'll only be able to do 7 shots in that cycle. So just to show you, it'll be 14% heat now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we tap out. So if you want the real source, you take 69% thermal resistance and 71% charge rate. If these percentages can change 1 or 2% either or, probably the biggest thing that you're looking for is 13% heat per shot. That will allow you to get 8 shots per cycle at the maximum amount of charge rate possible, because this does affect both the left click and the alternate click shots or firing modes for the plasma gun. So just to show that now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if you want the spicy best plasma gun, you're looking for a mix of thermal resistance and charge rate. I landed on this and I noticed it hit that breakpoint. So if you find one with 69% thermal resistance, 71% charge rate, consider that the god roll plasma gun, because the plasma gun has no true dump stats. In order to min max the gun, this is what I'm recommending. Now that brings me to everything I can think of in the moment right now. I'll probably change the plasma gun with the plasma pistol if or when that comes out. Again, I just like my pistols, what can I say? I hope I gave you enough options and variety to just play around and really tune Grenade Veteran to how you like to play. I like a mix of melee and grenades, which is why I prefer playing into that base damage, but I can't deny I love the attack speed with Trench Fighter and or Weapon Specialist. I do like the breakpoints of crit. Just play whatever you want. I change it on a daily basis. Have fun, God bless, enjoy. I'll leave you some gameplay and there will be a scoreboard at the end.